when was the last time you guys went on a date? And we have like a 5-month-old. And I was like, date? We haven't been on it. Well, we went out for our anniversary for like 45 minutes, but we haven't been anywhere, done anything together.
Have you had a chance to sit down with your partner uninterrupted and really use I statements? I feel like I'm doing all the work. I feel like that may not be true, but I can't shake the feeling. And I don't know what to do about that.
Take a girl and a guy, and they fall madly in love and form a family. Sprinkle in some counseling degrees and a doctorate, a dream of transforming relationships as we know it. And 20 years later, we give you power couple Dr. Ray and Jean Ketkodian. And this is Couples Synergy.
Welcome back to another episode of Couples Synergy with Dr. Ray and Jean. Hi, I'm Dr. Ray.
And I'm Jean. And this is our podcast about love, marriage, and relationships.
Check us out online at couplesynergy.com or on Facebook and Instagram at Couple Synergy. And please subscribe to our podcast and leave us a review or send us any suggestions on topics you'd like to hear more about. And now on to Couple Synergy, an in-depth look at love, marriage, and relationships, where we bring you our experience helping thousands of couples transform their relationships for over 20 years.
Every day we get to hear intimate details about a couple's celebrations, disappointments, and everyday challenges. We've often wished these stories were shared because we know we are more similar than different. So we've created not only an avenue where you can hear about people's intimate lives, but an atmosphere where people come over to our home pub, pour a drink, and share their stories.
People like today's guests, Catherine and Rick O'Brien. Catherine is a licensed marriage and family therapist and the founder of happywithbaby.com. She created Happy with Baby in order for new and expecting parents to discover the advice she wishes she could have had when managing expectations of parenthood and relationships. Thank you so much for being on our podcast today, Catherine and Rick.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
So we definitely want to get into the work that you do and definitely talk a little bit about the book as well. But before we do that, why don't you guys tell us a little bit about yourselves? How old are you and what do you do for a living? And how long have you been together?
Good questions. How old are we now?
52 and
45. Yeah. So Rick just had a birthday and we've been together for 18 years dating, and we will celebrate our 14th anniversary in April. And
wonderful.
Yeah.
Happy birthday, by the way.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
Can you tell us a story of how you met?
Yeah.
You can tell it.
It's called Match.com.
Back in the day.
Back in the day, yeah.
A long time ago.
I didn't have a picture, and so she didn't have a picture, and I think she responded to me because she wanted to know why I didn't have a picture. And
because it was back when you had to go. I had to go to like Kinko's to even upload a picture onto my computer.
Kinko's, wow, look at that. Yeah, that's really...
Yeah, like that's
Did you go to Glamour Shots too and get your picture taken?
Yeah, and so then I was working with at-risk families and kind of wanted to protect my identity on there. And it was new, like it was a newer format to meeting people, and a friend of mine had talked me into doing it. So I was like, well, I'll just send people a picture individually as they request it. And he didn't request it and wanted to meet me anyways. And I was just curious, like what he did. And we found out that we had some mutual connections as well. So, yeah. And then,
here we are
today.
How long did you guys talk before you met?
Like 3 times, maybe.
Yeah, it was like we connected right before the holidays, and you were going away for Christmas. And so he's like, well, when I get back, I'll reach out to you. So we had talked on the phone. He's like, I'll reach out to you when I get back. And he did. And we ended up meeting that very next day. On a Sunday night.
Well, I had a strategy that always have a reason to call it off if it's not going well.
Oh.
So met on a Sunday night because, if it didn't go well, I got to work tomorrow. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
He was much more experienced at this than I was. Clearly, I didn't have a strategy. I was just like, sure, I'll meet you. Yeah.
So you couldn't see through his strategy there, right?
No.
Sunday date.
What was your first impression in person?
I was like, oh, I was pleasantly surprised.
Well, I don't know what I had said, words to the effect of thin or
it was like, because you would like check off different boxes. So he was like athletic build, short hair, kind of like ideal. And so I had kind of joked with him like, oh, so you're going to be, bald and, short and like all these things. And so when I saw him, I'm like, oh, you are what you said. So.
And of course I thought she was beautiful.
That's sweet. Yeah.
And what was it about each other that you fell in love with?
Wow, I don't know that we've ever been asked that.
I know, that is a good question. I think for me, he was very easy to talk to and comfortable. And he did what he said he would do. Like if he said he was going to call me, he called me. He's always treated me with respect, even at times when we don't get along. Like I feel like he doesn't, go low and like make me feel bad about myself. He's always very and he believes in me when I when I don't. So I guess that wasn't how I fell in love with him right away, but I think over the years, like definitely he did what he said he would do. And I was shocked after dating many people that had not. I was pleasantly surprised. Yeah.
And I would say she was great company right from the get-go, easy to talk to, empathetic, just really was very comfortable to be around her.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So then how does your relationship develop from there?
Well, we dated for, I don't know.
Almost 4 years.
Well, we dated for 4 years, but we were dating, living separately probably for a year and a half, 2 years. And then Catherine moved into my house that I owned. And then we did that for a year and a half, 2 years, and then got married from there.
How'd you get engaged?
I suggested that we should go out and get a drink one Sunday night. We went back
Sunday, just in case it goes bad.
And I should have included that it was like a Sunday night.
We went back to the bar that we had originally met at, and I proposed to her there.
Yeah.
Very nice. Very nice. Did you see it coming?
No, because I was clueless. And I was even talking to him about remember when we met here, and I kept talking and he's like, yeah, I was waiting for you to be quiet. So
it's funny because we hadn't been back there for a long time prior to that. Yeah. And I had forgotten kind of the layout of it. I kind of envisioned I would get down on, the whole traditional thing, but the bar stools were up here. So
so he did not.
So that didn't quite happen as I envisioned it, but
yeah. Yeah.
So you didn't get down on one knee then?
I did not get down on one knee because she would have been it would have been like looking down from a mountaintop.
And I probably would have been like, what are you doing? Get up here. You're drawing attention to us. Yeah.
And so then how long are you guys without kids, or when did you start having a family?
Well, we had talked about let's be married at least a year. I mean, we were a bit older, we were both in our 30s. He was almost 40 when we got married. So we're like, we don't want to wait too long, but let's be married at least a year before we have kids. And lo and behold, we celebrated our first anniversary with a 3-week-old. So that did not, that didn't work out. We got pregnant much quicker than we had anticipated. And so that kind of rocked our world.
And then our second was born about 4 years after our first. And
okay. Yeah.
So what happened in that transition that made you passionate about helping other people go through those transitions?
Well, yeah, because we had a really good, solid relationship. It's always been easy to communicate with each other and, talk about difficult, situations. And, we're not the type of couple that fight about things, but we can have disagreements and then, work through them and resolve them and stuff. But bringing a baby home and being exhausted and like frustrated as we're like learning all these new things that we're supposed to know how to do and like take care of this little human. And it was really stressful for both of us. And I found like there was just more conflict, and like I would get my feelings hurt, which I'm sure had a lot to do with being tired, or he would say something and I would take it the wrong way, like finding it really difficult, and like just feeling like we weren't like on the same page with each other.
And we weren't, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
We weren't really talking to each other. We're talking at each other.
Yes.
One of the things we talk about in the book is that there was a lot of scorekeeping that we both were doing that didn't really know it or recognize it for that at the time, but convinced that I was doing way more than my share, which of course is ridiculous. But and then, well, the rest of the story is yours.
Well, and then I would go, to mom's groups or things during the day, at different times with our son, and hear other parents sharing their own difficulties. I was like, well, I was so relieved that it wasn't just me that was having a difficult time. But then I'm like, where was the memo? Like this was going to be this hard. Like, I wish I would have had known. I wish somebody would have told me. I wish. And then I was like, well, I was a therapist at the time. So like, I'm like, how am I so ill prepared being, a therapist? Like I should know this. I work with couples all the time. And so then I just kind of started putting together like this mental list of like, I wish I would have known this. I wish I would have known this. And like, I want to be able to share that with other people and be, maybe give them some tools or help them plan a little bit better than we were going into it.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that people are told about being a parent. Some of them more true than others, but in our experience, we weren't being told or reading anything that prepared us for what it would do to our relationship, the challenges it would put on our relationship. So I think that to try to remedy that deficiency was one of the things that was motivating to write the book.
I think that's really important because a lot of couples out there, especially young couples with kids, they don't have the support that past generations may have had. And so because of that they don't get that guidance as well.
Yeah.
And we are just, isn't it amazing? We're just bombarded by information everywhere. And yet people still don't know, and they still don't have that.
Yeah. Because I think we have information, but we don't have the support that goes along with like implementing some of the information too. And so that was like, part of like what we wanted to do. So, we started teaching a workshop prior to like writing the book. That was kind of the impetus of writing the book. And then, like creating like, support groups and stuff like that for parents so that they're like, oh, there are people here along the way to help us. And, in where we live here in Sacramento or at least they seem to be attracted to my group. And maybe that's why, because they don't have other family support or friend support, but they seem to move here from different areas and don't have support outside of their partner. And I tell people all the time, your partner isn't your postpartum plan. Like you need more than that as parents. Like it's great. And things work so much better when it's us together, but then we don't know everything. We can't do everything ourselves. We need other supports to, to help us along the way. And so it's like, how do you start building the support system to,
and recognizing where you don't have support and trying to plan for that and have a contingency plan the best you can.
Yeah.
Can you guys talk about the impact it had on your relationship? I mean, besides scorekeeping, like what did that feel like? You probably went from a closeness to some type of disconnection to a pivot point of coming back together.
Yeah, I think, I have a clear memory of the pivot point for me when coming back together. And it was like, I just felt like everything we would talk and like not hear each other, clearly couldn't hear what the other one was saying. Or, one of my, I always like joke about like, one of my least favorite things to be asked is like, well, do you want to get the baby? Cause it's like, oh, the baby's like crying in the middle of the night. And it's like, oh, he would ask, like, do you want me to get the baby? Yes, of course I want you to get the baby. I don't want to have to get out of bed. But you asking me that now makes it sound like I should be the one to do it, And so just feeling like little things he would say would just be like, everything felt wrong. Or he'd be like, well, what do you have to do today? I'm like, what do you mean? What do I have to? And he's just like, I know this because I know who he is. He's genuinely asking like, oh, what do you have going on? And I'm hearing is you have nothing to do today. You're just home with the baby, like hanging out, watching TV or whatever. I don't know what I'm sure he didn't think that, but whatever.
You weren't watching TV?
Eating bonbons.
I was probably trying to sleep whenever I could. But the pivot point was in the early days, like I would kind of flex my schedule according to his schedule because, we didn't have like a lot of support locally at the time. And so he would come home from work and I would go into work for a couple hours in private practice, or I'd work Saturday. So it was one Saturday, I was like on my way into the office and we had gotten into some kind of like disagreement. And I don't know what it was, but I was crying as I was like driving to my office, which never happened. Right. So it's like, clearly something's not right that he's made me cry as I'm going to go help other couples. And I just happened to call a very good friend of mine who is also a therapist. And I still to this day, I'm like, oh, thank God you answered that day, because I don't know like what would have happened had she not answered. But she answers the phone and I'm like crying to her, telling her what's going on. And all she said to me was like, when was the last time you guys went on a date? And we have like a 5-month-old or 4 or 5 months old, something like that. And I was like, date? We haven't been on it. Well, we went out for our anniversary for like 45 minutes. But other than that, with 3-week-old, but other than that, we haven't done, we haven't been anywhere or done anything together. And she's like, I just think if you guys go and spend some time together, like you need to do that. And so my mom actually had come to visit and we just went out for like dessert, I think. Yeah, we went out to get dessert. And it was just like, oh, it was almost like I could like breathe, like, oh yeah, I like you, you like me, like this is, we talk about our son and like all the, great things, but it just felt like, okay, like we are in this together. We're not doing it separately, and we just need to figure out a way to make some like quality time where we're checking in and connecting with each other. Cause that's what we were lacking.
Yeah. And I agree that was the pivot point for me. It felt, very much the same, but also the added on, like I'm not working the same amount. I don't have the same relationships at work I had, certainly as a single person, but as a non-parent. I don't have the same relationship with my wife. And now I have this infant as well. So it all felt very isolating. Mm-hmm. And so that going back out and hearing that, of course, you're in the same boat that I am. We're in this together, which of course I knew, if somebody had asked me, I would have been able to articulate the words, but I didn't think I felt that until we went out on that date.
It's almost like you got to give yourself permission to feel the sadness so you can grieve because you have this baby and you think, but I have this beautiful baby, so I shouldn't feel this way, but you do. And there's a grief that goes with the loss of the adult single life and becoming a parent.
For sure.
I think that is such so important. And, I talk about that all the time too, that grief with becoming a parent, that we don't give permission for that, because we're not supposed to feel sad about something or feel, miss something when we're excited about something else. And I think it's both. I think you can be sad about that, but also happy and look forward to the future. It's not, one or the other. And I think it's like, how can we have let ourselves have all the different feelings we're experiencing?
Yeah. I mean, now there's a acronym for it, right? FOMO, but we didn't have that back then, but
back in the day,
yeah. That's kind of what it was, right?
That's what you had. Yeah.
Yeah. Certainly to some.
And so you started this foundation and wrote the book because of this experience?
Yeah. So it's not, so not quite a foundation. So I have my private practice, and then in doing that, we started doing workshops and for couples. And then I found, was finding that, I'm hearing more about postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety. Like, what is this? Because it really was the only thing I'd ever heard of it really prior to that was Tom Cruise, saying something negative about Brooke Shields. So I'm like, so tell me more about this is something. And so I want to learn more. I want to understand this because I'm helping these couples and I can see it. Like, it was very clear to me. And so, I went and got some training in treating postpartum mood and anxiety disorders, and then was connected with other people in the Sacramento area. Like, how do we provide more support, to families? Because this is something like 1 in, 5 women will experience this. And then they will also, dads do as well. And their rates go up as moms' rates are there. So
would you say that's one of the biggest challenges that younger couples are facing today? Would that be recovery from postpartum, or like the lack of support? Just what are you seeing?
I think it's a lack of support. And I find, of course, it's not exclusively like women that don't have support have are the only ones that have, a mood or anxiety disorder. But I would say I tend to find it's much higher in the women that don't have support. And we also know, your risk for it goes up when you don't have a good support system, but then also a good relationship, like the risks go up. So I think it's definitely an issue that is kind of like, I know it's being talked about more and more, but I also think we still think like, well, this won't happen to me, or, like, I'm excited about having babies. So, I shouldn't feel bad, or like just waiting for it to get better. Like, sometimes I hear moms like, wait and wait, like thinking it's going to get better, and it doesn't, so.
Would you differentiate between postpartum depression and the chemical imbalance that someone's going through versus the adjustment and probably the lack of sleep and self-care and the normal things that isn't necessarily a disorder, but it's still a very difficult adjustment? Yeah. Or would you put it all under that umbrella of postpartum depression?
No, because I think, like, I have some moms where it's like, if we can get some of the self-care, if we can figure out a way to get more quality hours of sleep, their moods change, like they start to feel better. I think it's, and then there are the moms that, like, even though now I am getting a little bit more rest, or I have the opportunity to rest, but now I can't sleep anyways, that's that's a red flag, right? Or, I have good support systems. I have these things that are going, and still, like, something's not quite right. I feel like something's off. Then it's more. Then I say, like, okay, like, let's figure out, like, what else we need to do. Is it medication? Is, therapy? Like, they're finding more and more different ways. Like, if we can, kind of umbrella, like, we know, like, massage can be helpful. We know acupuncture, we know, like, all these different things and modes. Like, how do we get people what they need to make for treatment? And then in that time. So,
I think that is an important distinction that you were asking about, that there's definitely from listening to Catherine, being part of these courses, there are people that are having a rough time because they don't have the support. They don't have the connection they had prior, and those things can be addressed. And doesn't mean that everything's perfect, but they don't have the same pressures on them. And then I think, just kind of echo what Catherine's saying, you could fix all that and somebody still not feeling well. But having all the first one makes the second one more likely, right? If you have all the pressures and you don't have the support and you feel isolated and you're maybe already prone to that, that could be the thing that pushes somebody into having a mood disorder. So, it's it's an imperfect analogy, but I think it's all part of a spectrum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is that something that the two of you struggled with at all? Any postpartum issues?
Go ahead.
No, go, you go.
Well, I mean, looking back on it, maybe for me, it's certainly, again, using that analogy of the spectrum, I was on the lower end, but I think it could have been part of it. I don't know. What do you?
Yeah, I think, interesting. I think he struggled more the first time with that. And I think I struggled more the second with our second. Mm-hmm. And just, and I think, again, like there was less time to rest because we had a 4-year-old that were running to different, preschool and different things like that. And I think in that way it was more taxing because I got more sleep at night because we'd actually figured out to work together to get more rest. So I was doing that, but still definitely, I think it was harder the second time. Again, not, it wasn't diagnosed, and I did, I saw a therapist and that, but I didn't take medication or anything, but definitely it was more of a challenge the second time, I think, for me in regards to my mood. So
it was kind of interesting because in my world, there was just babies everywhere all the time. Mm-hmm. And my mom had 9 and my sister was 3 when my son was born. Oh. And there was already older cousins at the second generation level, and it wasn't a thing. And I think there was also much less pressure that we put on ourselves to do something. And we weren't so isolated. And you guys are already adults for 20 years before you introduce a little person. I was 21 when I had a child. So I never was an adult without a child. And so do you think that's a part of it? People are getting their information from books and all sorts of stuff, and they have so much pressure. And these women are having to breastfeed till their kids are 5. And I don't know, it just wasn't such a thing when I became a mom. Right. That it seems like their education's not coming from family and the real world. It's more like books and.
Right. And I think, and so then we have our expectations of what it's supposed to look like and what it's supposed to feel like. And I don't know. So you being 21 with babies all around, were there other people around, even if it was older kids, to help watch or do certain things, there's people around all the time to help you. Whereas I think, or at least I know, from my, personal and professional experience is we don't have those people to call. I was talking to a client today and I was like, if my husband and I want to go out, because I always recommend dating, right? But anytime we want to do something, we have to call, we have to get a babysitter, everything, it's hard. And it's do we have the money for that? Because then we need the money for the babysitter, and we need the money to go out, and we need, all of this. It's there's no one you can't just call hey, I'm going to call my mom or my aunt or whoever and see if they'll watch the baby with their kids or whatever it is. We have to coordinate all of this. And it's a challenge, and it's stressful. And then you put the stress on top of having a job, because a lot of people they're working full time or part time or working from home while they're trying to watch the baby. And then, running a household and then making time together. It's all these things that they're having to do. And it feels too much, and it's too hard. And I think it's exhausting and straining. And there's just, yeah.
Yeah. Cause we have this natural thing to be part of a tribe. Mm-hmm. And everyone's kind of in their own box, and it's super exhausting to try to do it all. And for sure, the kids, his cousins were part of his life, and we change off. And there was a lot of opportunity. Even when our other son was born, your parents took him. And a lot. I
think also it was kind of part of being a family. It was an expectation generations ago versus now. I think it's been replaced by a lot of guilt. And a lot of parents are struggling with, they feel guilty about asking their sister to come and watch, the baby.
Do, and they have their own thing. So I don't want to put more pressure on them.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think all of that's, totally agree with all of that. I think, and of course there's people that don't apply. or doesn't apply for now and didn't apply for then, right? But the one thing that is true across the board, I think, in that we're in a different world, that there's different expectations created from social media, from other media about what it's supposed to be like. And even though there's voices out there in the wind like us trying to say, no, this is really what it's like. This is what you should expect. The dominant theme is it's going to be great. Everything's perfect. You're going to love your baby immediately. Your relationship.
Enjoy every moment.
Yeah.
Enjoy every moment.
Yeah.
And the birthing process is going to be beautiful with birds singing.
And go just as planned.
That's one of the things that we talk about a lot in the courses that we do is that, this idea of a birth plan is great, but it's planning for what in the grand scheme of things is a sliver of time. Where's the plan, the postpartum plan? And so that's what we,
and the shame around the plan not working.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Because if you needed to get an epidural or you had to have a C-section or something, it's like, all the things.
Yeah.
So.
That's very interesting. The postpartum plan. I mean, can you guys talk a little more about that?
Yeah.
Well, so it's based on the idea. I was in the service, and we started talking about as we were putting our course together that, in the service, if we were going to do something, there was what we called a 5-paragraph plan, which you talked about how where are we going to get the things that we need to complete this mission? Where are we going to get them from? How are we going to use them? What's the communication plan? What, first of all, is the mission? Well, the mission in the family is easy, right? Take care of the baby and stay together. But what are the things that we need to do that? Well, let's start with the home. What are the things that have to happen in your house? You have to be fit, you have to eat, you have to have some kind of cleaning, you have to pay the bills, and then you add the baby on top of it. Well, how are you going to do that? You really need to start thinking about that before the baby comes and have a couple of ideas about how to do that so that when plan A falls apart or doesn't come together, you got plan B. When you talk about the idea of support, well, who is it that we can really go to and what can we expect from them realistically? And what I always like to say when we talk about this is nothing's for free, right? So, sometimes bringing a family member in means that you might have to accept that the family member is going to change things up a little bit. And is it worth paying that price for the benefit? And, sometimes it is and sometimes it's not, but you got to think about that before you're in the crisis mode.
And I think, the babies change very quickly. And if you make a decision here, it might not work 6 months or a year from here.
Yeah.
And like, how do you pivot?
Yes.
Right. Well, and that's where I think it goes back to like making sure that we're making time to connect and check in with each other, because it is like things are constantly changing. And that first year, they changed. They go from just being this little, some people call it a little blob, like this little person, that's just there that you have to do everything for, to like, some of them are like practically running, walking around, or at least like moving around and eating and stuffing things in the mouth and stuff like that. And so it's like they change drastically. And so it's like, how do you keep up with like what you're going to need and what support you're going to have and how do you work together? And it does it. Like, I think it's constantly having to be flexible and pivoting. And, I like joke that having kids has helped me recover from being like that type A personality, because like my kids have tested everything that I've ever, how I like things, and they've tested it. It was like I had to have two because they came from both sides to test my perfectionism. So and it's like, and it's been good, like not always good, but like it's over. I think I'm in a much better place than I was when I started, and it, just being able to let go of certain things too.
But one of the things, to your point, one of the things that I think is critical in a plan is communication. If you ask a couple, probably any couple, anytime, but certainly an expecting couple, well, how are you going to talk to each other? What do you mean, how are we going to talk to each other? We just talk. But what we really try to emphasize is you got to have some, especially when one's going out of the house or both are going out of the house to work. How are you going to communicate about what your expectations are when you get home? You really need to think about that now. Texts are better than nothing. A phone call is probably preferable if you can't talk face to face, but you got to plan for whether it's, at lunch, at an hour before we come home, because that's the worst thing that can happen, right? Whether you have or your parents or not, is you walk into the house expecting A and your partner is doing B, and now you're both pissed, right? Mm-hmm. And that could have easily been avoided with a little bit of planning on the communication.
And it's so easy to fall into really bad habits. Mm-hmm. And it happens, one increment at a time.
Yeah.
And if couples are not coming back together and really kind of processing things and how things have changed, do they want that change to happen? Mm-hmm. Where are we going? What's that point in the future we're heading towards? If they're not reconvening each time, then they can get very distant very quickly.
For sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's interesting because when you give birth, it's a painful experience.
Yeah.
And so whenever we experience pain, we feel shame, which is why we don't feel we did it well enough. And we were just recording another podcast about blame. And one of the things that we noticed is we like to hike. And what we noticed on the hike is anytime something went wrong, you instantly blamed your partner. Like rule number one, it's the other person's fault. And it's a natural thing we do. And so you both have this baby and you're both adjusting. And so it must be their fault.
Yeah.
Even though it's completely not true. And so it's that scorecard instead of being on the same team.
Yeah.
Because we don't keep score with teammates.
No.
Not good teams, anyway.
So it is so complicated. There's so much going on.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, it really is.
So how do people find your workshops or want to get in touch with you
or the book?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Where can they find all that?
Well, they could always go to my website, happywithbaby.com. Everything is there. The book, the workshops. We haven't, due to the pandemic, we haven't had any in-person workshops, though we have had the pleasure of meeting with several couples, like 2-on-2, doing like intensives via Zoom. So that's been a lot of fun and unexpected. Mm-hmm. And then also like on all social media at Happy with Baby. So,
and the book can be purchased on Amazon
or anywhere books are sold. So
there you go.
Great.
What would you guys say to someone that was really in the middle of really struggling with adjusting to having a baby?
Well, you're the professional.
I know. I'm curious what you're going to say, though, because I feel like I answer this question a lot. So I'm curious.
Well, before the pandemic, I ran a couple of dads groups, and in those, because there were both expecting dads and also ones that were right in the thick of it, and I try to always go back to what worked for us. Is that, have you had a chance to sit down with your partner for a period of time, 30, 40, an hour, whatever, uninterrupted, and really use I statements, mm-hmm. right, to say how you feel, but not make it like, to your point about not blame, right? I feel like I'm doing all the work. I feel like that may not be true, but I can't shake the feeling. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what to do about that, right? If that's the case. And then let your partner have the same opportunity. And it's not necessarily that you're going to come to fix it right at that moment, but you can't start and live while you're still both in these silos.
Well, and then I think we can understand what it is that we feel like we're doing and like, how can we work together or support each other better? Like maybe there's something that he's feeling like our big thing was like, who was getting up more in the middle of the night? Well, it was clearly me, but he did feel like it was him. I'm just kidding. But, and he, you know, and it was like, we just said it, and it was like, I heard him say it and was like, he is out of his mind that he really thinks it's all about him. But it was like that I could hear that he was really like struggling and like keeping it from a place of, I want to understand you better. I don't want to like, you know, question what you're saying. I want to understand you better. So then if I find myself, you know, one of the things, you know, I'll tell couples, if I hear myself wanting to like react or get defensive, then I feel like that's my cue that I need to ask some like clarifying questions, because I know in deep down in my heart of hearts that he doesn't want to be hurtful to me. Like, I know that. And so if he's saying something that I find hurtful or like offensive in some way, then I need to clearly understand better what he's trying to communicate, because it's either coming out wrong or I'm hearing it wrong from him. And so I think it's like, yeah, you know, like sit down and like make some time for your partner. Ideally like uninterrupted, even if it's like after the baby goes to sleep, or maybe they're sleeping there and you're holding them because they're in that stage, you know, but like make that time where it's like uninterrupted, you know, you're not distracted by looking at your phone or watching a show, but like being able to have like a good conversation. And that it is like hard right now, but it's not always going to be this hard or this exhausting. Like those early stages, right, are like an exhaustion that you've never felt. Like people are like, I thought I had new exhaustion. Like I went to college, I stayed up all night, but I'm like, this is like night after night after night. Like this is like torture, you know? You will never feel that kind of exhaustion, you know, and it's not always going to be that hard, but it's also, you know, don't let that like wall of resentment build, that you have this like conflict with each other, because it's going to be harder to tear that resentment, that wall down if you wait too long, and you're going to have to do a lot more repair work afterwards. So it's like, if you can start addressing it early on and know that you're not alone in this. It's like so many couples, you know, there's a high rate of dissatisfaction after bringing home a baby. Like you're not alone in it. It's just figuring out like, how do you get back, you know, together again.
And I think it's always important to let you know, we again intellectually know it, but now is not forever, right? Things will change. This moment in time of pure exhaustion will give way to a different kind of.
Hey, we're going into the teen years. I'm like, oh my God, hold on.
Yeah, everything you guys are sharing is really important, and there's so many people that need to hear this message. Even the part that, you know, it's just hard. It's just hard. Mm-hmm. So last question, what is it that your partner does that you know they love you?
Well, it just happened 30, 40 minutes ago, an hour ago, where she made my lunch for me, unasked, which was very nice.
Yeah, oh, that was sweet. Well, because he was busy doing something else. So then I was like, oh, well, I'll just do this while you do that. What does he do that I know he loves me? A lot of things.
Just one would be.
I know, I'm trying to, I'm like, what's the best one? Let me think. This is that perfectionist. I want to have the best answer. I think it is like, I mean, I think that he's always there. Like he's always like, I can depend on him. Like, even if he's busy, he'll respond like, can I call you back later or whatever? Like, you know, if I think it's urgent, but he'll be like, I'm in the middle of something, like, I'll call you back, or, you know, we'll talk about this later. Like, you know, and he'll come back and we'll have that conversation. And so like, I just know like he's always, you know, always available, even when he's not available.
To you.
To me, yes.
Not everybody.
Not to everybody, but to me, yes. And he's like an amazing, amazing dad.
Thank you.
Yes.
That's awesome. Well, Catherine and Rick, we want to thank you so much for being on our podcast today.
You know, sharing stories is a way that human beings have been processing their lives and bonding and growing and sharing. And we hope that by you guys sharing your story, it's enriched your lives and the lives of our listeners.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think it definitely has. You asked us some really good questions.
And we'll definitely put, your contact information, the website in the show notes and everything. We want to thank all of you, our listeners, for joining us today on Couples Synergy. Our passion is in helping couples and people have happy and healthy relationships. And this podcast gives us a fun way of bringing our knowledge and expertise to you, our listeners. For all of you listening, please let us know how you enjoyed the show. If you have any questions, comments, or topic suggestions, please email us at contact@couplesynergy.com. For more information about Couple Synergy and our programs such as Relationship 101, our home study course, the Couples Weekend Intensive, and our premier coaching program called Couple to Couple, look us up online at couplesynergy.com.
And if you know someone who could benefit from this episode, please download it and share it. And thank you for listening.
Until next time, synergize your life and synergize your love.
You have been listening to Couple Synergy with Dr. Ray and Jean Ketkodian. Couple Synergy was recorded, edited, and produced by Dr. Ray and Jean Ketkodian. Voiceover and music entitled Breathe and Let Go was recorded and composed by Gina Gonzalez.